Hi, everybody. We're going to get started with our very first group critique of perspective. Um, Before we get going, I just wanted to, since it's our first group critique, just to make a few um, quick announcements, I guess you could say, or just some tips or suggestions for the class. Um, and I just wanted to quickly show you a few different areas of the classroom, which you're probably already aware of, but just in case. So in milestone one, you can see that um, above milestone one, there's a few different areas here. And essentially what you're doing here is you're kind of starting at the course home. And let's see here. And that's where in general, there's nothing too critical on the um, announcements board, but it's good when you pop into the classroom in case something has come up. I'll post it there. And then what you do is you just essentially go through these areas here, starting at the course overview, project brief. Here's an area called questions for the professor, which you can, anytime in the class where you have a question, you can put it in here or you can email me directly. Doesn't matter. In fact, emailing me is, in a way, it's probably the fastest because I do check my school email quite frequently, whereas I only am in the classroom 5 out of 7 days a week. I have my instructor schedule on the announcements board. I'm out of the classroom Tuesday and Sunday, but I sometimes do check my email on those days. So it's good to email me. And then what you do is you just head in and you just go through and walk through these particular categories from top to bottom throughout the week, and we're in milestone one. One of the areas that I think is really important is the learning activities area for each week. That's where you really see a lot of the lecture material content of the class. So do check out all of these. Like, for example, drawing preparations is a really important part for week one. Drawing techniques is another one on drawing prep presentation and so forth. So there's also a lot of really good material directly in the tasks themselves. Like, for example, in task one, there's this wonderful video here on how to work with the assignment. But really, the learning activities is where there's a lot more detail. So don't skip those. Make sure you become familiar with the material in there. Okay, and let's see. So what I'm going to be doing today is taking a look at your drawings, and we're going to start with everybody's drawings and presentation, making sure that your file format is correct, that your drawing is photographed or scanned well, and that you photoshopped it. And in this class, you're required to have Photoshop. If for some reason you don't have Photoshop, you can download a trial version of Photoshop from Adobe, 30-day trial. If you've used your trial and for some reason you can't get Photoshop, there's also online editors like Pixlr, Pixlr.com, which is a free online website that does some pretty sophisticated web editing, and I think you'd probably be able to do what we do in this class. And essentially what you're trying to do is take your photograph or your scan and then take it into Photoshop. For example, here, Masa and Jesus, you can see here that you've got some photoshopping definitely to do here. Your color is a little bit off, and it looks like just different things, and we'll talk about them. So I'm going to focus on that in week one, in task one and task two, making sure your presentation is looking just as perfect as it can. This is something that we do in an online classroom because in a traditional classroom you don't have to document your work. You're bringing it to class and having everybody look at it from there. But so this is this additional step that we do in an online classroom where what we're trying to do is get our drawing to look as close as we can to the original that you have. Um, this is actually a really good skill to know, how to document your artwork. And once you kind of figure it out in week one, you just kind of will just follow that technique through the rest of the class. And the reason why it's good, I think, is because these days a lot of what we do is virtual. Where you might be taking sketches and sending them to a client. Emailing them to a client. And so being able to document artwork, I think, is a really good thing to know how to do. So again, you might have to spend a little bit of extra time in week one figuring it out, but it'll be well worth it. Okay, so we're just going to start going through in the order that people have submitted assignments. One last thing. I have posted here, you can see right above our discussion board thread, just a series of tips that I put together based on my experience teaching the class. Things that I have noticed that really help students be successful in the class. So please review those really carefully. I think I've got 6 points in there. And if you follow those, I think you'll be in really good shape for the class. Let me know if you have any questions about them, but yeah, just make sure to check those out. Hi, Damaris. Okay, so yeah, you've done a nice job here at demonstrating a really strong understanding of the concept of one-point perspective. One-point perspective essentially is where you're facing the front of things very evenly, where your rectangles and squares are 90 degrees on all sides. So essentially we only have one, so everything else except for the front is vanishing towards that single vanishing point. So it's just, the different forms of perspective we're studying, 1, 2, or 3, the only thing that makes them different is the fact that we are changing our vantage point. So I also like what you've done here of creating these, really interesting shapes. It's really, really nice. And you've also worked with, shading in some of your foreshortened sides, which is great. And your presentation looks very good. So the only suggestion I have is maybe just evening up some of the line work, wherever you can. So for example, if something is, all of these edges, make sure that they're, fairly even, the even line weight. I mean, we're working with pencils, so there's a natural kind of organic quality to pencil line work. But you can see here how these outlines here are a little bit darker than these ones. So you could just go back through here with your ruler and just kind of even them out a little bit. Dark is good. And also on the interior parts for the areas that are going to be see-through, the shapes, you're going to have approximately half of your shapes that are see-through. And that's all I think you need to do here. Otherwise, I think everything else looks really good. Hi, Carol. Okay, so yeah, overall, I think you did a nice job with this assignment. Your presentation looks very good, like your documentation of your drawing. Your craft is excellent, where your guidelines are lightly sketched in. Your line work is really beautiful. You've got half of your shapes opaque and solid, and you've shaded in some of your foreshortened sides. Nice job with shading them in really beautifully too, very even. So the only thing I think is just this shape right here. It looks like maybe instead of going towards the vanishing point, you kind of just went the other way. I've noticed for myself that there are certain parts of a drawing that I find hard to work in perspective. And actually maybe the lower right might be hard for me. Sometimes what I've often done is actually flip the page upside down so that I can draw in a way that seems more kind of natural for me in visualizing the perspective. But let me just show you how to fix this. Okay, so I've just erased the lines. I've left this shape, the triangle. And all you would need to do is, so you've got the vanishing lines here. So you just kind of go and, wherever you want your triangle to be, you just, that's all you needed to do really. If you wanted just a solid one, why not? And then this line here, the original line of the shape is going to be parallel back here to this line. In one-point perspective, your lines are always parallel. So that's it. Nice job. Hey, Jesus, so before we get started talking about your drawing, we're just going to do a little photoshopping. Again, if you don't have Photoshop, there are other alternatives. But first of all, I'm going to rotate this. I'm not 100% sure which side is upright, but in this drawing, it doesn't matter too much as long as we've got the horizon line left to right. And then let's just maybe see if we can color correct it. So the first thing I like to do is can go up to adjustments here and turn it into black and white. And what that does is, like, naturally what happens with your drawing is when you take a photograph is whatever light, oftentimes the light in our environment is very warm in terms of color, And it makes our drawings, even though our drawings are black and white, it actually makes them appear yellow because our lights are yellowish. They're incandescent lights. So that's one thing you can start with. And then you can also, I sometimes go up here to image and auto contrast because sometimes that magically will make the paper appear whiter, which is what it is. It's a white paper. So that's pretty good. Okay, so let's take a look here. So yeah, all of your shapes, yeah, you've got a really good sense here of drawing in one point perspective. Everything looks quite accurate. So I would just say that, the thing you want to work on is making sure that half your shapes are see-through. Uh, so you can, have the guidelines behind them darkened in. You want to make sure that just the foreshortened sides are shaded in. So, for example, this side facing us is not foreshortened, and this side, so you wouldn't shade that in. So you would have that white and then just these sides. And then if you're going to foreshorten a side, I would foreshorten the whole thing instead of just a part. Um, you want to make sure that your guidelines are lightly sketched in and then your edges are darkened. So what that means is with your guidelines, they're going to be quite a bit lighter. So you can use a hard pencil, for example, like whatever the assignment says, like an H pencil and then a B pencil to darken it in. You can also do this with pressure too, very lightly with your guidelines and then coming back and darkening your edges. I would actually recommend just redrawing this because I think especially in the drawings like this where these drawings, once you've done them once or twice, they can take you just a matter of minutes. It's often much easier to redraw than it is to go back in and erase things. So just redraw it. Make your shapes a tiny bit bigger. You'll find it a lot easier to work with when your shapes are larger in terms of drawing them and also showing with the drawing the shapes that are see-through, making them see-through. Okay, so that's what I'd work on. I think with one more drawing, I think you're going to really have a terrific one. Hey, Masa. Okay, so we're going to start with your presentation. First thing you want to do is you want to make sure that you're saving your files as a JPEG file rather than a GIF. GIF files actually have a lot of good uses, but they're not very good at capturing drawings. So this class has a JPEG requirement. So when you scan or photograph it, just make sure you're saving it as that JPEG. And the other thing too is, you've got a lot of white areas around your drawing. Do you know why that happened? You want to, let's just crop that off. We're going to do that here in Photoshop because there's no need to have all of that white. We just want to see your drawing. So let's get rid of that. And see what we have when we do that. Okay, let's zoom in a little bit. Okay, so now we're going to do the same thing that we did with Jesus. We're going to, let's just make it a tiny bit bigger here. See if we can optimize it. Okay, so we're going to turn it into black and white. There's different places you can do this. Oh, hold on a minute here. I'm not sure, I'm not sure if I'll be able to do this on your file. I'm going to have to do it a little bit different because it's a GIF file and it won't allow me to. So, but anyhow, there, that's a little bit better. Maybe I'm going to, it's a little bit, you see that, can you see the paper is a little bit dark here? You want to make it a little bit whiter. So let's try auto tone, auto contrast. I'm going to leave it the way it is right now. Okay, so, okay. All right, so yeah, I think you've done a nice job here at showing one point perspective, which is great. Yeah, I like that you've been working with some different shapes here. That's definitely okay to do. So I would just say the main thing is there's a little kind of blooper here. It looks like I might just erase that out. And then just kind of like go through here and I would like clean up some of your line work on your guidelines is a little dark, and some of your edges are not dark enough. So I would go through and make sure all of your edges are even, make sure that half your shapes are see-through, like this guy here, it looks like maybe it could be a little more like you want to make sure to get all of the lines in for this one, if that's going to be see-through. So just kind of go in there and, um, put those extra lines in. Oops, my my mouse wants to do something funny here. So, kind of just kind of make sure everything's even, cleaned up, nicely crafted. I think that's the main thing here. In this one right here, this is it's a little hard to draw organic shapes like this in perspective, like and then to make the foreshortened side look correct. So I might just replace this shape here with like a cube or a rectangle or triangle, just make it a little bit easier. I think you did a nice job with foreshortening this side, like this worked out pretty well. But it is, it's not a requirement to do organic shapes. So, maybe keep it simpler. Um, and okay, that's the main thing. Just kind of, tidying it up a little bit, and I think you'll be in good shape. Okay, so Patricia. Okay, so with your drawing, so in terms of the presentation, first of all, you want to make sure to submit a JPEG file. Now, PDF files, there's actually a really pretty good file format for a drawing in terms of, if you wanted to send it to a client. However, it makes it very hard to view in the classroom from my point of view. I can't open this in Photoshop and do any correcting or drawing on it, which is what I need to do. So submit it as a JPEG, and then when you're photographing it or scanning it, try to get a little bit more or less contrast in it. Right now it looks like it's just black and white, and you do want to see a little bit of the guideline, like the gray in it. So if you increase the contrast, maybe don't do that so much. Um, when you're drawing, you want to make sure, again, you want to make sure to capture the nuances of your drawing. Okay, well, so let me see if I can open this in Photoshop because I would like to draw on this. So just let me tweak this. Sometimes I can get a file format in there. Okay, so it looks like got a fairly good understanding of perspective. And I think there's just maybe a few, kind of in a way that this is really just about kind of tidying it up and making sure everything is really accurate. Um, Starting with the guidelines, make sure that you're using a hard pencil to lightly sketch your guidelines in. Okay, use a ruler on all of your lines and just kind of start with that and then darken the edges in. Um, so let's start with this shape. So this is the front of your shape here. What's going to happen back here is that all of these three lines are going to be parallel to these three lines here. So for example, this line here is actually going to be parallel, and then this line is going to be parallel. So you kind of have to eyeball it and just kind of make sure everything is really accurate in your drawing. I would skip the organic shapes. Just, I would take all of those out. I think they're a little bit harder to do, and just stick with the required shapes, triangles, rectangles, and cubes, and work with those. I always recommend students work with straight like rulers in this class as much as possible, because I think you can learn perspective a lot better with that. With this guy right here, just make sure all of your lines are parallel here. Just go back through and, really kind of get a really nice accurate lines here. So I would just do this drawing again, like I mentioned previously to another drawing. When you're working with perspective, and learning it, I find it easier to just do multiple drafts, and every draft you do will be easier rather than going back into a drawing and trying to fix it, because that just takes a lot of, a lot of extra effort. And a new piece of paper is just, I think a really good use of your time. So that's what I would do here is take what you've learned, work with the basic shapes, work on your craft, work on your presentation, and I think you'll have a terrific drawing for the final submission.